here with Chris from Masquerade Games. Nice to meet you. And yeah, so we're just here to talk about some of your upcoming plans. And yeah, I guess to start off, do you want to tell us about maybe some of your upcoming iOS plans for Epigo or for some of your other games?
So Epigo, for the camera's sake, there you go. Epigo is a two-player abstract strategy board game. It does have a multiplayer, four-player variant. We released it at Gen Con last year. Okay. In terms of reviews, it's done extremely well, but we're a new company that's learning the ropes, and it's been a little bit of a struggle in terms of getting people to hear about the game. But part of this is it is a very good game, and it's very well ported over to an iOS type of application, because one of the problems that abstract games face is the fact that finding someone else to play with, right? You know, chess are more established games. There's clubs all over the place, and it's easy to find someone to play, but a brand new abstract game, not so much. So the iOS has really opened up games like this for this. This is really the first time we're announcing the fact that we've been working with a development studio called Redfinch Studios up in Canada. They're developing the game for release on iOS roughly June, July, where it's going to feature artificial intelligence. So you're going to have a couple different modes you can play on your own, learn the game. Tutorial mode, asynchronous multiplayer. It's primarily going to be two-player for right now. We do have plans to add four-player in. It's going to be iOS universal, so iPhone and iPad, no problem. It'll support the iPad 3. We do have plans for Android as well. That's going to be a little bit later down the line. Okay. We're going to focus on iOS initially.
Great. So is it going to be, a pretty straight? Is there any changes like graphically to the design, or is it pretty?
Yeah. So one of the big issues with Epigo in terms of porting to the iOS is you've got the board, and then you've got some of the pieces which are relatively close in color. It doesn't port well onto a nice bright backlit screen. So there's going to be some changes. Most of the graphic elements are the same. It's going to feature the same symbols around the corners.
Okay.
It's going to be a little bit lighter background. The pieces will be higher contrast, a little bit better readability for font, because in the iPhone it's a lot smaller of a real estate.
Right.
So rules changes, everything's going to work exactly the way it does. There's like one minor super slide rule that we're still working on from an asynchronous standpoint. You don't want to keep interrupting the game. Right. It's a unique challenge. But in general, it's going to be pretty straight port. The big thing with Epigo is there's the core game. The core game rules come just very straightforward. It takes you 5 minutes to learn. Once you master the game comes with a variant book with 21 different ways to play. And we've released a lot more through our website. We actually just released a new set of multiplayer deployments. There's different ways of setting up your pieces. Initially, there'll be a couple of those programmed in, and then we're going to be offering more. Potentially, we're not really sure how we're going to do it yet. Just updates or in-app purchases. It really depends on where we decide to go, because we're not the only ones that make that decision. So
right, that makes sense. So will the asynchronous multiplayer, be using Game Center, or will it be using?
We've talked about. I think when we develop the Android, we're going to probably support that and OpenFaint. I don't really know exactly how those work in terms of.
More on the developer side, I guess.
Yeah, it's more on the developer side and how they interface with each other. But initially, it's going to have Game Center integration with full achievements and everything else. So.
Great. I'm trying to think of anything else. So, apart from Epigo on iOS, do you have any upcoming board game releases?
So right now we're in development. We did release a second smaller title at Gen Con last year. It was more of a very limited production run for the show. Okay. We do have plans of releasing that on a broad scale. It's a game called Simpletons. It's available on Board Game Geek, but I think it's got 4 votes. No one's ever heard of it. But we do plan on mass releasing that at some point in the future. We are also working on our next big title. We don't have I can't make any kind of announcements for what the game is called yet, because it doesn't have a title. But it's a bigger box game, more of to a wider audience. It's not an abstract game. It's a betting strategy and card drafting game. That's the best way to phrase it. Quick, games play about half an hour, quick to learn. Testing extremely well.
Great. So I know Masquerade Games, Epigo's been out for a little while, but you're a fairly new company. How did you get started? What inspired you to go out on your own?
I guess I had to thank Magic the Gathering, like about half the other game companies that exist out there now. But in college, a bunch of us lived a bunch of engineers in a dorm. We started playing Magic the Gathering and became very good friends. After college, my business partner, Chris Goslin, kicking around game ideas. We're like, hey, why don't we try to start a company? So we went to Gen Con just as people looking to start making a game. There was tons of panels there where we learned from some of the best in the industry, kind of saw what was successful, what wasn't successful, and we started making games. And at first they were terrible, but then when we played, the biggest thing we played lots of games, and through that we've learned a lot about what works, what doesn't work, what do we like about a game, what do we want to publish. And so eventually, Epigo just kind of happened, and we're like, hey, this is a great game. Let's give it a shot. So it's certainly been a learning experience, but from a lessons learned standpoint, Epigo's been great for us because we've gone through everything from I did all the graphic design of the game, doing the rules development, coming up with the variants, to actually publishing the game, and there's so much that goes into that. And then when you make the game, you've got this great shiny box, and you've got thousands of them sitting on a pallet, but what do you do with them? And getting them through distribution and into stores and marketing, and it's very tricky because our industry, besides Board Game Geek, is not a mass way to get the news out about games. There's not a magazine that's widely available, and it's still kind of developing in the U.S. So it's been exciting.